Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I love all the excited and the caffeinated and stoked and excited. I love the energy. So thank you so much for carving out time this Saturday morning to learn, to get some nuggets. We have an amazing panelist on this discussion today, and I'm really happy to partner with the CSU EA for a second time in a second year in the Editors Guild to bring to you this wonderful panel and very necessary discussion. So before we dive into the fun stuff, I do want to talk a little bit about who I am. My name is Shari. I'm the Director of Operations of Pipelines. Pipelines is a mobile app that connects underrepresented talent directly to jobs and training opportunities across tech, entertainment, and creative industries. So it is a free mobile app in your mobile app stores. Jessica has dropped the information in the chat. Please take advantage of this. It's a free, viable resource for anyone who wants to pursue jobs and training in this industry. I also want to kick it over to Dina, who's going to tell you a little bit about the CSU EA. Take it away, Dina.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. We're delighted that you're here, and we hope that this session is valuable to you. The CSU EA is the Cal State Entertainment Alliance, and what we try to do is connect our campuses in the California State University system to the entertainment industry in more meaningful ways than what you're experiencing in class. So we are very excited to partner with the Editors Guild today so that you can learn directly from professionals who are in the thick of it, in working on projects, have amazing portfolios, and can really answer any kind of like honest question that you have, that you feel like maybe you can't ask the professor, maybe the professor doesn't know. But anyhow, I want you to check out our website at csuentertainment.com, and you can follow our social at the CSU EA for opportunities, for grants, for internships and training opportunities. It is our job to help connect you to the entertainment industry. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you, Shari, and thank you to Haley, who's in the background producing, making things happen, and to all of our panelists today.
Thank you so much, Dina. Okay, so let's get right into it. I want to kick it over to the panelists to introduce themselves, and if the panelists can just share, obviously their name, their role, and then some of the work that they've done, maybe your top 2 favorite jobs, and then we'll dive into the discussion. And we'll start with Aziza, and then Daniel, and then Agustín.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Happy Saturday. My name is Aziza, and I have been an assistant editor for the last, 12 years, 13 years. Sorry, I should have probably added before this. And I've just recently made the transition to editor full-time. My favorite projects, I would have to say, are Sparkle, which was Whitney Houston's last film before she passed. And because of the career jumps that I made during that project, so I can share more later, and which would forever change my life. And then my second favorite would probably be Beyond the Lights, with the director Gina Prince Bythewood of Love and Basketball and Old Guard and more. I think that those are the questions, right? Should I?
You're good. That was perfect.
Or is that good?
Perfect. Thank you, Aziza. Daniel.
Hey, everybody. I'm Daniel Nussbaum. I'm a first assistant editor. I work on, currently working on the next Indiana Jones film. I've been working in the industry for about probably 12 years. And my favorite projects were Logan and Jojo Rabbit. I've had really good times working on both of those projects. They were both very different animals. Yeah, I'm happy to be here and share some of what I've learned along the way today with you. So.
Thank you, Daniel. And Agustín.
Let's see. Yes, unmuted. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here. My name is Agustín Rexach. I have been in post-production for about 27 years. I started as a commercials editor, which I did for about 17 years before deciding to reboot my career and go into scripted editing. I've been working in scripted television in Hollywood for about 7 years. My favorite projects, I have to say one that I've done on my own outside of the scripted realm is a documentary that I edited called Soy Cubana about Cuban a cappella all women's group. It won the audience award at this year's South by Southwest, so we're very proud of that. And also getting to edit on The Good Lord Bird for, starring Ethan Hawke. It won the Peabody, and it told the very irreverent story of John Brown, and who's credited with starting, some historians credit him with sparking what led to the American Civil War. So that was a fantastic project to work on.
Awesome, thank you so much. And we do have another panelist who will be joining us late. So once she does join, I'll make sure to carve out some time so we can meet Kristen. So just let you know, at the end of the discussion, we will have time for questions. So I would just please ask to hold your questions. Do not put them in the chat during the discussion because we won't get to them, but I'll open up the floor at the end of the discussion so you can ask questions. So I highly recommend, if you do have questions throughout the discussion, just to jot them down so you don't forget. Take advantage. They want to answer your questions. They love questions. I'm totally speaking for them, but they love questions. And this is the opportunity for you to get the gems and the nuggets. So don't let this opportunity pass you by without asking questions. So let's get to it. First and foremost, I do want each panelist to answer this question because I do think it's important. But how did you get your start? Like, how did you know that editing was the career path for you? Because I think a lot of people or aspiring editors don't know where to start. They don't know that there's not a linear path. Everyone's path looks very different. So if we could just go around and talk about how you got your start, what was the moment that you realized this is what you wanted to do?
Okay, well, yeah, I'll start. I was raised by creative people, but they weren't in the industry per se. My dad was a math teacher and my mom was a public defender lawyer. So, but they kept me involved in theater and festivals and things like that. And so by high school, I was taking a ROP class. I don't know if those still exist, but this called Regional Occupation Program. And I was working for the local cable station in Long Beach, California. And that was like my first taste of like legitimate, like real production for TV, for television. It was news, but and we focused on sports broadcasts. And so I was very, 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 very intrigued by the live feed, like the director who was in the truck, like telling which camera go now. And so that was my first taste. And I was really like, I want to dig into this more. By my senior year, a program was introduced to me called it's like a DVD yearbook. So up until that point, there was no such thing as like a digital form of a yearbook, but there was this program that came out called Film Ed. And like, I ended up helping to get it started at my high school. And through that, I had cameras all the time. And I learned Final Cut Pro one. It was like Final Cut Pro 1, I think. That was like one of the first versions, obviously 1. But yeah, and from there I was like, once it came down to apply for colleges, I was like, this was like the only thing that I really wanted to do. And thank goodness, like my mom supported me because I ended up going across the country. I didn't stay in Los Angeles. I really wanted to get away from college and just really get some independence. And I went to Northwestern University outside of Chicago, and I majored in film. And that I thought I was, you know, a cinematographer. Like I came in with the focus of cinematography, and all my classes, like up until my senior year, I was taking like high level DP classes. And then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I don't really like setting up a shot for 2 hours, and I don't like having a light meter, and this is not really my thing. And I realized like I had been spending most of my time in the editing lab, like the techs there, they knew me by first name. Like that was where I was spending most of my time. And so it wasn't until I graduated in 2008 when the economy crashed, and it all kind of came together after kind of graduation when I came back home to Los Angeles, where I had this epiphany that I was an editor. And that was actually what I enjoyed spending my time doing. I didn't like being on set. I like some people you'll hear it's like paint drying, just like I don't want to be on set. And I realized that I love the creative process that takes place in the editorial room. So that's kind of what happened. I got home and I said, oh, okay, how do I get into an editorial room? Because all my internships through college had been in production or development. Like I had did all the things that I knew that I didn't want to do, which is great. You should know what you don't want to do too. And ultimately I finally figured out like editorial is where I wanted to be. So there's my start.
Love it.
My path was really different in terms of like, so I grew up all over the world basically because my dad was in the Navy, and so I was a little kid growing up in Sicily and Panama, and you know, he always sort of instilled a love for film. So that was the thing that I really loved growing up, was just going to films and movies, just loving movies. And when we came back to the States, I lived in Virginia and went to high school and then college there. And in college, I got into theater. And so I did some technical theater and I did costumes, and sort of my career took the path towards working as a costumer. And so I did that for 15 years. I traveled with some Broadway shows and worked at the Shakespeare Theater in DC, and worked at the Los Angeles Opera as the assistant wardrobe supervisor here, and eventually got sort of, you know, the idea when we moved to Los Angeles was always sort of trying to get into working in TV and film. And I did some of that, but then, you know, things happen in your life. And my dad passed away when I was, you know, like around 2000. And it sort of took the wind out of my sails, you know, big major life event sort of, you know, sidetracks you from your path, you know, because I had just started getting my days in working in television. You know, I worked on some soap operas and the Tonight Show, and but you know, when my dad died, then I sort of came back and was not quite as motivated, and I just wanted something that was simple to do. So that was when I took the job working at the opera, and I worked there for 7 years as the assistant wardrobe supervisor. But I was not being creatively challenged at all, and I was getting frustrated and not feeling like I was moving forward at all. And so I was like, what can I do? You know, what else can I do? And I've always loved photography. I've had a camera in my hand since I was a kid, and you know, it was something that my mom always encouraged me, you know, to take pictures. And people always told me I had I had an original eye. So, you know, the things that I took pictures of, or the way that I took pictures of things, was always different from, you know, the way other people would take them. And I was always good at computers. So when I was working in theater, you know, anybody that needed to use their computer, I was the one that was teaching them how to use their computer. So I was like, I have this visual sense, and I have this, you know, this knack with electronics and computers and stuff like that. What can I do? You know, and there used to be a school here. There was a technical school here in Burbank called Video Symphony, and they offered an Avid professional program. And they also did motion graphics, and they had a sound program, and it was an intensive sort of thing. And I had so I researched this stuff online, and I was like, I think that's what I want to do. I think I want to, do the editing course. And it was a commitment of time and money. And luckily I had the ability to, do that. We owned our house, so we refinanced it so that I could pay for school. And I basically went back to school full time for 14 months and trained in the Avid professional program at Video Symphony. And through that, I met a lot of people, and I spent a lot of time in the labs there, just being on the computers all the time and studying more than, because I'd already been through college and had already done that. I was really focused on the idea that I needed to gain all of the technical skills. If I was going to do this, I was going to need to gain all of the technical skills in order to jump into a new career, basically. And so, so I did that full time and worked really hard on that. And towards the end of my program, there was a tech guy, one of the tech guys who did support for the whole school, that was working on independent film, and he needed somebody to be an assistant editor, and he was working on a version of Final Cut, and he had like 2 days of dailies, and he was like, I need somebody that can help me cut, and I've seen your working class, and I think you could be that person. And so he's like, I don't have any money, but and I was like, yes, sign me up, so I got a great opportunity to work on this indie film that was very personal to the director. He was a survivor of Columbine, the Columbine shootings, and so it was a very personal story for him. So I got to cut, a secondary character in that, and it was great, and it was creative and fun, and then I went back and finished my, like the last class that I had to do at Video Symphony, and then I was like, okay, now what? And I had two instructors in school that were very much about, they were like, you need to have a focus of purpose. You need to decide what you want to do, because you can't, there are different sectors of editing, and you need to choose, you need to have a focus of path. Because I'm older, I was older because I'd already, done something. And so that sort of stuck with me, that I needed to choose what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to work in features. And so that was sort of the path that I chose. And so I met some people and at like ACE Functions, which is American Cinema Editors. They have a lot of functions that you can go to network. And so I spent a lot of time, networking and meeting people. And by doing that, I ended up with an opportunity to interview for a job on a feature film at Fox as a PA. And so that was sort of the beginning of most of my career. I worked my way up through many features at Fox, but I proved myself in that PA job at the beginning, and I've worked through many shows, and now I'm working as the first assistant editor on Indiana Jones. So that's sort of my quick path. I could go much longer, but we don't have time for that.
Thank you, Daniel. And Agustín?
All right. I have a very different path. I was born in Puerto Rico, born and raised in Puerto Rico. I left the island when I was 20. And that had that really shaped my path, or lack thereof, because, you grow up in a place that has no film industry. My mother cultivated a love of cinema with me, but for us, that was like a magical thing that happened somewhere else, So I had the opportunity when I was 20 years old to go to film school at Boston University. To actually go to Boston University, I didn't even think that I could have a career in film, much less in Hollywood. So I went there to the School of Communications thinking that I would major in what I knew I could do in the island with like journalism or maybe television. So once I was there, it hit me when they asked us to pick our major that I could major in film production. So I have to be very honest, very terrified about it. Nevertheless, I chose it and I went for it. Now, I also went to film school at a time where, and I think this has also defined my life in general, I've always been firmly planted in transitions. My class was the last class to actually physically cut film. When the last week of film school for me, they took us to a place where they're like, we're going to show you this thing called an Avid, and it's revolutionizing how we cut movies. And I saw it and I was like, that's great. Awesome. Last week of college for me, and I never get to touch this thing. So at that time when I graduated, I also fell hopelessly in love with this woman in the island. So I went back to Puerto Rico and I needed to work. So the only real industry at the time in the island was commercials. A lot of advertising work being done there. So I found out what the premier production company in the island was, and I walked in with my reel of short films, showed them to the head manager there. He called me the next day. He's like, I like what I see, come in. And so like Aziza, I had the same experience because, you go to film school and you're like, well, I'll direct or I'll be on set, like editing seems to be like it's very rare. I only met one person in film school, Lisa Lasek, ACE, who really knew from that point on that she wanted to edit. Everybody else was just like stumbling around trying to find their place. And I was no different. So I started going on sets, training to be an assistant director and all that stuff. And right away, like Aziza, I had a crisis because I hate this. I can't stand being here. I feel like I'm dying. But at the same time that I was doing the crewing and working on commercial shoots to earn some money, they had told me, the boss at the company had told me, he said, listen, we just got this thing called an Avid. And if you learn it, like only one person here knows how to use it and we're killing him, because, he's editing everything. So if you learn it, we'll give you a night shift. And I'm like, all right. So I wanted to learn it. So I did, but I had to teach myself. So it took me about 6 months to kind of teach myself the Avid, and the daytime editor was very kind and would show me things and whatever. Long story long, I learned it, I got the night shift and I started editing commercials. And that's where, kind of my editing career took off. And for the next 17 years, I edited commercials that eventually took me to the United States. And I just very unconsciously, because I knew that I always wanted to be in narrative filmmaking. So very consciously, I was working my way west. Like I started in Puerto Rico, worked there for about 2 years. That work secured me an offer in Miami. I moved to Miami. I worked there for about 8 years. Then they called me from a post house in Texas. I went and worked there for a while, but LA just kept calling. And finally in 2010, I was like, my then wife said, we got to do this, we got to go for it. And so we did. We moved out here. And again, it's not a linear path. It wasn't instantaneous because I had a family, I had a baby, and I had to provide. So even when I got to Los Angeles, I still had to work in advertising. Finally, in 2014, I was working for an editorial house in Santa Monica, and my contract ran out. They decided not to renew it. And so all of a sudden, which is a very nice way of saying you're fired, you know. So all of a sudden I'm unemployed. And you know, when life kind of puts you up against the wall, you're kind of like, well, I might as well start punching, because, you know, if I'm going to go down, I'll go down swinging. So I walked into the post-production offices of the first season of From Dusk Till Dawn, which was being done in Burbank. And having nothing to lose, I said, you know, can I intern for free? I'll just want to come in and work. And I took the same approach that I took when I taught myself Avid. When I taught myself Avid, I showed up every morning as if I had the job, like 7:30, 8 a.m. I was there, whether I got time on the Avid or not, but I was there. So I did the same thing at Dusk Till Dawn, you know, like every day, 8 a.m. I was there. And I was just, you know, having been an established editor or whatever, I didn't care. I was making binders for the assistants. You know, I was making Xerox copies. I was just like helping out. And so one of the assistants, Felicia Livingston, who's now a fantastic editor in her own right, I owe her my career. She like kind of took a shine to me and showed me how to bring in dailies and all that stuff. And so they very quickly saw that this guy is like a unicorn, like he knows what he's doing. We just have to teach him how we do things here. And so the other thing that I had done, which was invaluable to me, even though I didn't have any union work or anything like that, I had squared everything with the guild. Like I had my paperwork in order. I got on the roster through commercials. So I was ready to go. About 2 weeks into that interning at Dusk Till Dawn, they had a personnel change, and all of a sudden they needed another assistant. And so all the assistants and editors were like, well, we got him right here. And so if he's squared with the union, hire him. So that's how I got hired. I got hired on that show. And based on that, I ended up staying for about 6 months on the show. Like I came in halfway through the season and ended up staying till the end of that first season. And that word got around, and then I got a call from Hawaii Five-0, and that led to my very long and fruitful partnership with James Wilcox ACE as his assistant for about 6 years. And the rest is history. I've been, you know, just working nonstop, and now I'm, you know, actively, you know, working towards transitioning into the editing chair.
Thank you.
And that's it. And I'm so proud to be like on this panel, because like everybody's hair is super dope. Like I'm like, you know, this is like the super hair club, man.
Yes.
You know, I'm thinning a little bit, but I can still rock it, baby.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's so powerful, and I love to start all of my panels with that, because if you're watching, it's not an X plus Y equals Z formula in this industry. So you really have to do the work to create your own story. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. We only have about 20 minutes to get through these questions. So I'm just asking if we could just make the responses concise, because I want to make sure that we have as much information as possible that for the attendees that are here today. So without further ado, I'm going to move on. So I want to talk a little bit about getting into the union, because I feel the energy from the attendees. They just have this burning question, like, how do we get into the union? Like, how do you get your hours? So we could just talk a little very concisely about how to get into the union, how do you get your hours, what steps should they be taking if that's their ultimate goal?
Well, they should first go to the contract services website and the guild website and look at what the requirements are in order to join the guild, so that they know what those things are. And they need to understand that it's a two-part process. You have to apply with contract services, which is run by the producing companies, and you have to qualify to be on the roster first, and then you can join. Then you can join the union, and the requirements are basically the same, but you have to do the contract services part first, and then you can join, and then you can take those days and requirements to the union. It's all of us have done that a long time ago, so it's best if you go and look at those websites to see exactly what those requirements are. But I don't know how Aziza and Agustín got their days, but I worked as a PA on 3 films, and by working with people and working hard and doing my, those people that I was working with in the industry found ways and found projects that I could earn my non-union days, so that I could join the union. And then they sort of supported me to get that paperwork done. And then when it was all official between those two bodies, the contract services and the union, then they, bumped me up to an assistant editor on the 3rd film that I was working on. And I got 30 days, and then I was able to join the union.
Nice. Nice. I've never heard that specific story. That's really cool. Oh, sorry. I have this email that I send around that basically is from probably 11 years ago. And I don't think the contract services process has changed too much. So from what I remember, there's this letter, that you're going to write to this person, Joey Forrest, I think that kind of rings a bell. And, when you collect the certain hours, that's what that's who the person you're going to send it to, CSATF. Since the COVID-19 pandemic has started, I think there has been some, hiccuping in getting a lot of people processed. There's a lot of people I'm mentoring, whereas the CSATF process is taking forever. So just know that it's not just you. Stay on them. Keep following up with them when you don't hear back from them in a timely fashion, because they are they have fallen behind. So you got to stay on top of them. What else would I say? Same thing that he just said. The Editors Guild and CSATF are 2 different entities. I have so many people that are like, oh, the guild isn't moving fast enough and they're not helping with this process. I'm like, that's not the Editors Guild. That's CSATF. Be mad at them. Editors Guild, that's two different parties, 2 different groups of people. What else did I want to say about this? There are a million ways that you can get in, but just make sure that I've told people when you're trying to collect those hours, CSATF has very strict rules about where you can get the hours. So like what just was mentioned, make sure you look at which entities are not accepted, because then you might not want to waste your time spending so much time in those places because they're not going to accept the hours. And also what I've told people, when you work on independent projects, if it's not one of the norms, you have to make sure that your paycheck says your role. It has to say your role. If they give you some general like a personal check and it doesn't say assistant editor or editor, they're not going to accept it. So that's something I just wanted to make sure to mention, but definitely look on the website. It's been a long time, like he mentioned, so just whatever has changed, because there's been some things that have changed too with new things that they accept. Some things with it's considered new media and things like that. They've had to open up some of their doors. And as far as how, I think the last part was how did I get my hours? I did my hours in reality TV. I saw in the chat that there's some other people that have been working in reality and are looking to transition over to scripted. That was a route that a lot of people I know took to get their hours. And I think it's very valuable, given that reality is one of those realms where you are often wearing so many hats in the editorial space. And I anytime somebody has worked in reality, I know that they have taken on a lot and know a lot and are resourceful. And I am, I know that they know their stuff, because reality demands that of you. Okay, I'll stop.
But I have one point of advice about reality. It's a great place to get your non-union days, and that's how a lot of people do it. Just make sure that because it's a branch where you can quickly move up, like they'll see your skills and you'll move up and you'll get more and more responsibility and you'll become a first, and then you'll be seeing over a bunch of people and you'll be getting raises and you'll be getting opportunities to cut and you'll be, moving up, and it all seems really great. But if you want to do something else, if you want to work in scripted or you want to work in features, you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this for this amount of time, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to shift my focus to the other things that I want to do, because you can very easily get trapped by the money and the steady work and the commitments that you have for other things in your life. It gets hard to say to step away from that because oftentimes in order to make a transition between reality or scripted TV or features, you have to take a step back in terms of like how much money you're making, the position that you have, so you have to have to gauge that, and you have to make a little pact with yourself that says, okay, I'm going to do the days that I need to do in order to get to the next steps that I want to go on to. And you have to be really true to yourself and, follow through with that.
Yeah, he's talking about too, pigeonholing, and also where you spend your time building your network. That's where most of your connections and your jobs will come from. So if you spend wherever you spend time, that's a lot of the times where your jobs will be coming from, and the people who you're networking with. So that's what he's speaking to. And like, Agustín could talk about how he took that. I call it big, huge sideways steps. Like I try not to, my perspective, I try to say sideways steps.
Mm-hmm.
I took a sideways step leaving reality, and I took a post-production assistant on a feature that ultimately I ended up taking over the first assistant editor position on the film. And if I wouldn't have taken that sideways step and been making minimum wage, I would have never been able to have that opportunity come to me at the time. So yeah, I saw somebody in the chat talking about strategic moves, and those are strategic moves. So yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that.
To that point, I really want to emphasize the fact that we tend to get into those mindsets, and this I'm speaking mostly about myself because I'm very guilty of this, especially lately as I try to negotiate or navigate becoming an editor. And becoming an editor in the eyes of the industry, where the industry sees me as a viable editor, because I've been editing forever. It's that mindset of like, oh, I'm taking a step back. No, you're not taking steps back. You're like a boxer that bobs and weaves. You're not going backwards, but it's very true. You have to. In a way, all of you who are starting out, start looking at what you want to do in little compartments, what is it that I need to do now, which is get my hours. I'm going to get my hours, and if I can get them here, so be it. But know that you might have to bob and weave if you want to be in a certain sector of the industry. I'm here to tell you from experience and learning the hard way, there is no cross-pollination in this industry. It's very difficult. And I'll tell you guys why. When there's so much money at stake, this industry is very risk averse. Okay. So producers, anybody's always going to go to the usual suspects. It's very, very difficult for the industry to take a chance on unproven people. I edited commercials and I did a lot of indie features and documentaries over 17 years. When I broke into scripted television, I'm glad that I went the assistant route, because I got to tell you, I would not have been ready. Even if the industry had given me a chance to go into the chair, I wouldn't have been ready for the demands and the operational tempo that it means to edit scripted television. And it's something that I'm glad that I've been having the chance to see from the assistant's perspective, get used to that, see the things that you need to like polish, you know, like when we do this project.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I think he's frozen. Agustín? Okay, I think we're frozen. I'm gonna move on for the sake of time, because we only have 7 minutes before I open the floor for questions. And if just one person answer the next 2 questions, I do want to leave time for students and attendees to ask you guys questions. So I do think it's important to understand the difference between a first assistant, a second assistant, and an assistant editor, just in case they don't know. So I know some of you have different credits. So could either of you explain the difference between the 3, just so whoever's in attendance understands that these are 3 distinct roles?
Daniel, you want to do it?
Sure, I can do it. So the first assistant editor basically runs the cutting room. Well, you know, that's not true. It depends on what, I'm sorry, it really depends on which thing you're working in, whether you're working in reality, scripted television, or features. Like in features, there's a first assistant editor, and that's the person that runs the cutting room. In television, I've only worked on one television show. I worked on Westworld season 2, and that was an HBO show. And so that's, again, its own entity. In that case, you know, the assistants were attached to the editors, and they worked for the post supervisor. So it can't be simply broken down into like first assistant, second assistant, or assistant editor.
I can second what you just said about the TV space. For TV, everybody is technically called just assistant editor, and you're tied, like you said, to your editor.
Right.
But in reality, right, they have lead assistant editors, right?
Right, and there's somebody that works days, and they have people that work night shifts and are doing assigned tasks, you know, digitizing, breaking down cuts, syncing multiple cameras, especially on reality. You know, there's like, you know, sometimes they're shooting, you know, 12, 20 cameras, you know, and those all have to be sunk together. So that's a whole different animal. You know, if you're working on television, a lot of television stuff uses script sync. You know, so an assistant editor will spend a lot of time doing script sync.
And we have swings. A lot of times in TV, they will have a swing sometimes that's doing a lot of the scripting work.
Right. So
in the features, that person swing can not necessarily mean just scripted. I mean, a script sync. It also can mean that they are doing the outputs, right? And
right. Yeah, as a first assistant editor, you're sort of in features, you're overseeing the entirety of the cutting room. On the project that I'm working on right now, we have a cutting room in the UK, we have a cutting room here, we have editors with remote systems in their homes. So we have to keep all of that in sync. And so the assistant editor is keeping track of, you know, what's going to sound, what's going to music, what's going to visual effects, what's, you know, what the visual effects editors are doing, what the other assistant editors are doing, bringing in dailies. So you're overseeing all of that. A second assistant editor is being given more specific tasks. You know, you do the dailies today, or you know, you do a string out, or you work on sound for this scene, or you work on music for this scene. So the you know, the hierarchy, you know, becomes more specific tasks. So you start in the lower levels, like, you know, first feature that I worked on, I was a second assistant editor, and I was doing dailies, you know, and then I was going to set, and I was setting up a remote, I had a remote cutting room that was on set that the director came in to watch dailies. And then you know, the next movie, I was the 3D assistant editor, and I dealt only with turning over cuts to the 3D department. And then, I learned visual effects, from the visual, I was an assistant editor, and I was assigned to work with the visual effects editor and do, turnovers and count sheets and lineups. And so there's a lot of variety to the jobs and variety to those specific tasks, depending on whether you're working in reality, whether you're working on television, or whether you're working on features.
And then there's also the apprentice editor,
Right.
which has been so rare recently, but there's definitely been a boost to get that position back into the room, which is really exciting. Because the apprentice editor position it can basically be like an intro into the cutting room without having to do the post-production assistant role even. So definitely look into the apprentice editor position if people are trying to get into the feature spaces mainly. I want to say I think it's much more rare in TV, but I don't think it's impossible.
Right.
If a producer is open to it, I think it's still possible.
Thank you guys so much. I do want to open the floor for questions. Please PM me directly with your questions. So if you drop it in the chat, resend it to me privately. I'll only ask those questions. I'm opening the floor right now. Private message me your questions so I can ask the panelists. And I just ask the panelists so we can make sure we get through as many questions as possible in the next 10 minutes. That we maybe have one, maybe two very short, concise answers to answer the question. I want to make sure I get through everyone, as many as possible. So I'm going to ask these questions, private message me directly. But before I do that, for the panelists, if you have, because you guys have such great knowledge and resources, as you saw in the chat, everyone loves the nuggets that you're dropping. But if you have additional resources or job boards or initiatives or clubs or anything that aspiring editors or current editors should know about or take advantage of, if you could please drop it in the chat. So everyone who's going to save the chat today, right? Everyone in attendance, make sure you save the chat at the end. If you could drop those resources in the chat, I think that's very important. I want them to be able to leave with tangible resources that they can plug into and take advantage of right away. So again, forums, job boards, websites they should know about, articles you read, clubs they should be a part of, anything and everything that they can take away and apply immediately. Please drop it in the chat. So let's get to these questions. Wow, we have a lot of questions. Okay, I'll get through as many as possible, I promise. First question, where is the best place to find footage to edit that you can show on your portfolio when you're first starting out?
Somebody sent me one of these. I'll have to go through my emails. I wouldn't be able to give it off cuff right now. But there are quite a few websites I've been hearing about where you can even pay for like footage that was even, put out before, where you can use it and edit it.
Yeah, somebody dropped it in the chat. Editstock.com is the one that comes to mind. What Misha Tenenbaum started,
Yeah, Misha was in school with me at Video Symphony.
Yeah.
And that Editstock does a little connection with, there's a program called Master the Workflow, which is done by a couple of our union members. And it's a really great hands-on kind of, you can interact. It's really great educational thing. And they do a thing where you can, spend like $97 a month for 12 months to do the program. So, and they do a limited amount at each time. And it's a great place to network and meet people and get really practical knowledge about working as an assistant editor.
Thank you. Next question. What are some of the most valuable traits in fellow editors and assists that you have worked with?
You said traits? Like traits?
Traits. Traits.
Kind.
Empathetic.
And here's the one that works for me. Obviously, all of those are wonderful traits. Kindness and empathetic go a long way. But from an operational standpoint, if you can connect dots and anticipate problems, I think if you at every point everything that you approach it with a mindset of how can I make life easier for my editor, my producer, my showrunner, you're going to be okay. You know, that's going to give you the kind of attention you want to get.
Yeah, I was actually starting off with what makes my life less toxic, because this industry can be definitely very toxic. But he is right on the money. That is definitely something people will be looking for, is somebody who anticipates situations and can think ahead and be proactive, organized. Like I was starting with the thing that makes me more whole person right now. But yes, those things will get you in the room. Like when you follow up after an interview and reflect more on maybe the conversation you have, people will see, oh wow, okay, this person's passionate about it, and they want to be here in the space, you know.
Great, all great stuff.
Sometimes when people say, yeah, I really want to be a writer, it's like, well, what you doing over here? Like, you know, but that happens, right? That happens. People just got to pay the bills. You got to pay the bills. But I really do gravitate to the people who really want to be in that space.
That's a good point.
Because I'll invest in them. I'll take the time to really invest in them.
Thank you so much. Okay, what kind of resume or portfolio should one have when applying for AE positions?
One that's specific to AE jobs.
That's a good one.
There's a great book called what's Lori's book called?
Make the cut.
Making the Cut. Yes, it's about assistant editing, and it's got samples of resumes in there. So it's a great place to look at for Making the Cut. Lori Jane Coleman and Diana Friedberg. Yes, somebody's holding it up. Dina's got it. She's holding it.
Yes, and drop it in the chat because they're going to save the chat and refer to it later.
Yeah. And then they did a great follow-up book to that. That's making the jump from assistant editor to editor. So it's got all really great advice. And a lot of it comes from the ACE panels that they would ACE educational panels. So highly recommend. Find that it's a great source of information.
Thank you. Okay, next question. How do you keep up with the tech side of things? Editing systems, software updates, new cameras. It all changes so much. When you're operating at the level that you do, how do you do your job and future-proof your knowledge for the jobs coming up?
You sort of have to go with where you are and what you just have. It's impossible. Yeah. So you just
I used to
go ahead.
I used to, back when I first started, I would subscribe to a whole bunch of like different tech articles, like tech emails. Since then, the world and everything has just become a little bit more overwhelming. So I've been unsubscribing from a lot of things, but now it just comes from word of mouth. And I'm still on certain social media platforms like Facebook. So I'm part of like editorial groups, and you hear about stuff on there. Hey, there was this update. What's going on with this? So those have been helpful. And that's how I kind of stay in the mix. And then like, I honestly, the young people, like you guys keep me fresh. Like I half the time I'm like, oh really? That's the new thing I can do in Avid? I had no idea. So I listen to people that are on my team, people who are paying attention to what's happening. I know I sound like I'm like, outdated, but sometimes I feel that way. I'm like, why can't I just have Avid 5, like 5.5.3, and like we're all the way up now, and I'm just like disappointed. But yeah, I'm there. That's how I keep up.
That's actually a perfect segue to the next question, Aziza. And I think it's an important one. This question asks, do I have to be skilled in Avid? I'm only proficient in Final Cut and Premiere.
If you want to work in scripted and most union work, yes. Avid is still king. And before we all get into that discussion of like what's better, it's not about what platform is better. The argument to that point is simply this. Most of the infrastructure in Hollywood is built on an Avid ecosystem. So all your outside vendors, picture houses, sound houses, they've invested all this money in resources and tools that through the years work very well in an Avid ecosystem. So, you know, you have to use the tool. Do I love Premiere? Absolutely. I really think it's a wonderful tool. But as an editor, I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead. You can do the most brilliant edit in the box, but if you can't deliver it, you know, if you can't turn over your sequence and successfully deliver it to your colorist, your sound mixers, you might as well go home, you know? So whatever platform you're editing in, and now this is the assistant editor in me talking, you start, before you make a cut, I go down the assembly line and talk to everybody. What do you need? What are your specs? What am I expected to deliver to you? And what platform works best for you? This is like when I do independent and documentary work, to me, it's vital because you're also dealing with your producers' budgets and all that stuff. And in those projects, money's always tight, you know, and when you have those technical snafus and surprises on the back end, it can kill your budget. So it behooves you, you know, for professional responsibility to connect those dots at the beginning, you know. And for me, I sort of kind of work backwards from that. I study the entire post-production pipeline, and if it's within my power to decide the platform based on that knowledge, I decide what I'm going to cut in. But I have to say, on every union show that I worked with and scripted has been Avid, you know, and that I have no control to choose or whatever. It's what it is. You know.
Thank you so much, Agustín. We only have time for, I'm so sad. We might need a part 2. I don't know, because I have so many questions. I'm so sad I can't get through all of them. We've reached our time, but I'll ask this last question for each panelist. And just for the sake of fluidity, if you could just name 3, this person's asking, name 3 non-technical skills we should be honing as we build our portfolios and resumes and pursuing this field. So 3 non-technical skills that editors need.
Listening.
Understanding politics, so being able to read the room.
And yeah, like I said before, you know, if approach everything from when I said this to James Wilcox when he interviewed me, and he's been the definitive professional relationship in Hollywood. He told me that because he took a chance on me, like I wasn't that experienced as a scripted assistant. But he said, what made me take a chance on you was this sentence that you told me. He said, listen, I'm not interested in being the smartest guy in the room. I'm interested in being the most helpful. And he said, when you said that to me, I'm like, this is the guy I can roll with, you know.
Oh, and I'm gonna squeeze this in. Work-life balance. This industry will zap every single hour of your time and take everything from you. And one of the biggest things that you could do for yourself is to have balance. I have more faith in the younger generation. I think you guys are on to something. Keep it up, seriously. Work-life balance. Your life is not all about your work. It's about having time with friends, family, and doing whatever you like to do, self-care. So that's very important.
And to that, Daniel and Agustín, do you have a quick tip of advice for students or talent or people who are already in this industry and looking to level up, of what the piece of advice that could help them in their creative pursuits? One quick tip.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I know.
I know, because I am going through that. This is why I'm hesitating, because I have to say, you know, like, even like I speak at these panels and you all guys make me feel so wonderful and whatever, but we all struggle you know, independent of what level you're on, you know, we all are always struggling with our challenges. My challenge right now is how to effect that move from assistant to editor, you know, and I have to admit, you know, I'm finding it very challenging. You know, I'm finding it very difficult to affect that, you know. So yeah, I mean, this is the human side of me talking. I wish I had like an answer, because there is no set path, you know. And yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank. Somebody help me here.
Daniel, take it away.
I would say when you reach out I mean, networking is really important in this industry. So it's about all of your jobs will come from people that you know and that you've met in some way along your journey. And so interact with truth and honesty when you want to talk, when you talk to somebody. You know, don't go up to talk to somebody just because they've worked on the biggest thing in the world. If you don't have something honest and true to say to them, if you're approaching them just to say, oh, can I get a job? Then you'll be discounted and pushed away. So have something honest in your interactions. I always say when I go to events, I'm a big proponent of going to American cinema editors events, because there's a lot of great people there, and they all want to mentor, and they want to help people move up, and they want to help them find opportunities. I always say, you know, that as long as I've interacted with one person in an honest way when I go to those events, then it's a successful networking event. So, you know, reach out to people, but in an honest and true way, with thoughtful, you know, dialogue, you know, because we're all human beings too, you know, our lives are not only about editing. We have families and, you know, loved ones and things outside of work that inspire and, you know, drive us. And those are the kinds of connections that you need to make with people in order for them to remember you and think about you when an opportunity presents itself that they will recommend you for, you know.
And following up with them, up when you meet
Yeah.
them at these events. One of the big things I think made me stand out sometimes is people were like, wow, you followed up with me. And it wasn't in a leeching way. It was just, hey, checking in, you know, we had this great conversation about this, look what I found. I might even send them a link to something, you know, that's a follow-up based off of what we were talking about. And it's genuine, seriously, like what he's saying, genuine, authentic. People can read when you are just trying to get something from them. And some people are not open to that, you know?
That's such a great point. And I love a mix between piggybacking off of Aziza and Daniel's point. This is a relationship-based industry, okay? So less of let me network to get a job. To Daniel's point, you have a lot of people just networking to get a job, and they can see right through. You should be focused on building relationships, because that's what's gonna get you the next gig. That's what's gonna get you mentorship. Like so many things that come up, just curating genuine relationships in this industry. And to Aziza's point, this is not a reactive industry, okay? You have to be proactive and go out there and seek mentorship, seek networking opportunities. You have to seek jobs, okay? You can't wait. Very rarely do they just fall in your lap, and that's great if they do, but you have to be proactive and not reactive. So I love all of this. I don't know about you guys, but I want to push for a part 2, because I feel like we just don't have enough time.
Say something to that too, like before we close. I want to speak directly to, you know, you guys that are starting out, especially, you know, my BIPOC people out there too. Like, I know that it can be really scary because we don't offer, or this industry doesn't offer a set path. I'm here to say, like, trust in the humanity of the people you're going to meet. You know, most of the people in this industry are contrary to the perception, are very genuine, giving people. And never underestimate how good it feels for someone when you allow them to help you, you know? So please, 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 because this is something that I struggled with, being a minority, coming from another country, all that stuff. Do not let that fear get in your way. I have let that fear get in my way for many years, and it's gotten me nowhere, you know? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. We're all human beings. We all have the same desires and the same passions and the same fears. Don't quit on yourselves, because you will never quiet those voices inside of you. You might think you can, you know, because you don't want to face those fears, but those voices will always find a way to creep to the surface. So you might as well just service them, you know?
Yes. Oh, this is great. Okay, I'm gonna try and get a part 2, guys. I can't make any promises, but I'm really gonna try, I promise, because this is why these conversations are so necessary. And I really love each and every nugget that was brought to the table today. Daniel, Aziza, Agustín, you are amazing. Thank you so much for carving time out on your Saturday to just drop the gems of knowledge and share the wealth. That's really what it's about. We should always be sharing. We should always be mentoring. We should always be pouring into others and always opening doors. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you to the Editors Guild, Susie, Tracy, Adriana, who are here today. Thank you so much for providing this opportunity for everyone in attendance. Thank you to the CSU EA. It's always a pleasure partnering with you. Follow the CSU EA, follow Pipelines, follow the Guild, seek the knowledge. The Editors Guild is a viable resource to help you with what you need. So reach out to them. They have information available to you. Follow the CSU EA. We do more events and panels like this. Specifically with Pipelines, we do an event every few weeks that we focus on a different area of entertainment. So make sure that you follow and stay in the know so we can continue to have necessary conversations like these. And you might see a part 2 come up too. So thank you again so much. Happy Saturday. Let's feel the fear and do it anyway. Best of luck in your career journeys, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so, so much. I'm pumped for part 2 too, Brianna. Let's do this. Happy Saturday. Thank you.